It's time for another installment of Sea Hunt. It's still alive here on Scuba Shack Radio. And this time I'm going to take you back to Season 4, Episode 3, titled The Destroyers. Now, The Destroyers premiered on January 21st, 1961. This episode opens up with Mike on board a Coast Guard rescue cutter commanded by Lieutenant Dave Tulley. Now, they're just off San Clemente Island investigating a major disaster. 2 U.S. Navy destroyers have collided. Mike describes it as the worst cut-up since the war. Just then, Mike spots a survivor in the water. He's in trouble. Mike grabs his fins and masks, jumps in, and saves the man from the tangled wires pulling him underwater. Now back on board, the survivor tells Dave and Mike that it was the radar. Something went wrong with the radar. It was jammed with all sorts of interference blips. The scene then shifts to a large building, which is the Navy Board of Inquiry, and they've just judged that Commander Ben White, the captain of the destroyer that hit the other one, is at fault. We then see Mike and Dave on the dock. Mike's in his Coast Guard auxiliary uniform. I think he's a lieutenant commander. Now, Dave can't believe that Ben is at fault. Commander White then comes into the picture. He's accepting his fate. But Mike has another option. He's going to do an underwater search of the site to see if there was anything that could have caused the problem. Commander White just happens to have a chart in his pocket at a collision site. Now, that's pretty fortuitous. We are now back underwater at the collision site. Mike's in his doubles and he's got a metal detector. Unfortunately, he's picking up so much stuff from all the battle wagons that drop things over the side. He's running low on air, but figures he could give it 10 more minutes. Even though he's covered an acre of underwater real estate, he's come up dry. Just then, he spots an old marine boiler. It's the size of a bungalow with a manhole on top. He drops inside and quickly realizes that this is more than a motel for fish. It's filled with electronic equipment, all wrapped up to be waterproof. As Mike is fiddling with the gear, he discovers it's booby-trapped, and he sets it off. It starts ticking. He grabs it, takes it out of the boiler, and drops it on the bottom as he races for the surface. As he gets to the surface, he's pulled on board the CG-4045 whaleboat just before the explosion. Another close call. It's now time to go back and check out the gear inside the boiler. This time, Doc Martin, an experienced diver and electronic expert, is with Mike. They go inside and run some tests on the equipment. I think they got their answer. Yes, it's there to generate high-frequency emissions and jam radar. Question is, who did it and where are they? Doc says they could be anywhere. It's remotely operated and signals back to the saboteurs when it's working. So Mike, Dave, and Doc decide to set up an ambush. They're going to disable the transmitter, and when the bad guys realize it isn't working, they're going to come and give them some trouble. Mike and Doc head back down to the boiler, and they liberate the radio set and bring it topside. Now they must sit and wait for the bad guys to realize their jamming system isn't working and come to check it out. As Mike and Dave are sitting at the electronic monitoring station on the forecastle, Dave brings them some coffee, and the 3 guys joke about it being boiler ink or battery acid. I know from my time in the Navy, the coffee can be really bad. It's already been 2 hours since they pulled the transmitter, and no sign of the bad guys. Dave says they may have to wait 2 days. But just then, a coded signal starts coming in over the speaker. They listen intently. Mike tells us that it's an unhappy signal since they didn't get an answer. That's the whistle that starts the ball game, and Mike heads below. The Coast Guard cutter moves just off the horizon so as not to scare off the saboteurs. Mike is down near the boiler on the lookout for the bad guys. He is conserving his air. The plan is for Mike to release a surface marker with an electronic signal on it to call in the cavalry when the bad guys show up. As he waits, he spots two divers coming at him with power scooters. They're Porto Subs. It's time to release the buoy, but too late. One of the divers punctures the buoy and it sinks to the bottom. Mike doesn't have time to release the smoke bomb and call Dave to the rescue. He's got to think fast. He dodges one scooter and kicks the other, then races for some coral to hide in. Mike has a fantastic fin kick as he outruns the scooters and hides in the coral. Unfortunately, they know the terrain, and he has dim hope. On the surface, Dave is pulling the string. He isn't waiting any longer and orders the cutter to head to the dive site. That's a good thing. The bad divers split up. One goes after Mike while the other hangs back. Mike has to make his move and evade the first bad diver. But the other bad diver has a knife, so Mike improvises. He uses his fin to break off a piece of razor-sharp elkhorn coral, then proceeds to disarm Scooter Boy 1 and shred his air hose with the coral. Now it's time to take on Scooter Boy 2. Mike uses the Porto Sub to fool the other diver into thinking it's his accomplice. He hits him fast in the stomach with the Porto Sub, pulls out the regulator, and holds a knife to his throat as they head to the surface. On the surface, Mike is finally able to release the smoke bomb. Dave spots it, and then he comes in to pick them up. "Nice work," says Dave, and Doc wants to know if the equipment is all right. Mike tells him it's all good. The only thing he wants right now is a nice hot shower. Dave points to the fishing boat off in the distance and said that's where the divers came from. But we never really know who they are or why they did what they did. Maybe we'll find out in a future episode.